Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, final boss in internet shitlords. And today, which will not be the day the video comes out, but the day before probably. Today I just had a very interesting meeting. I met with a guy, contacted me, said, I'm coming to Montevideo. I'm a huge fan. I would love to meet you in person. I said, sure. And turns out this guy is the publication director of Javier Milei. He was coming to Montevideo because Milei was in Montevideo for the Mercosur meeting. I had a very nice meeting with him. He's like literally one of the core guys in the inner circle of Milei. He has to go everywhere Milei goes because he's the one that decides what photographs and what videos are put up and stuff like that. And he's an excellent gamer and a huge fan of my work, and I'm so pleased about that. That's wonderful. I mentioned this already on Twitter. Someone said now we need to take, I don't know why, but they said we need to send Milei a copy of Arrows of Indra. Now, personally, I think that the Invisible College would probably be way more up his alley, right? It's about basically libertarians trying to free humanity from the shackles of the deep state, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think that would be more his vibe, really. But anyways, now that I'm deeply connected to the Milei government, I mean, we know Milei has got really close ties to President-elect Trump. Actually, you should just be President Trump because he was a president before. You're always addressed as president even after your term is over. But and since he's got that connection, I mean, like, my friend, the publication director, my fan, better put it, he was just showing me pictures of Mar-a-Lago and stuff, you know. He had just come back from there. You know, that means he's got an in also with Elon Musk. In fact, he took a picture with Elon Musk. And so I figure I'm going to have to tell this friend of mine that the next time he runs into Elon, he needs to suggest that Elon buy Wizards of the Coast and that there's somebody who knows a lot about game design that Elon could hire on to save D&D, you know, to make D&D great again. Namely me, someone who worked on the most successful Wizards edition they ever had before it got made so woke that nobody can stand it anymore. So, yeah, that's the thing, right? And we were talking, he wanted to know, you know, how badly is the 2024 edition doing? And I'm like, well, you know, I've seen some numbers and it's not good. But you never know, it'll depend on the VTT. The point is, now that there's like an actual guy who is like he actually met Elon Musk and could easily meet him again, I've got to be prepared, right? There's every chance now that I personally will be called on to save D&D. And so I wanted to share with you guys my vision of what I would do with, like, let's say Elon takes over Hasbro. Suddenly I get contacted and they're like, well, we want you to be in charge of D&D. And how will you, what will you do? How will you fix it in WotC, and how will you fix the game, right? So this is what I would do. I've already posted a little bit about this on Twitter, right? I've said when Elon Musk comes into WotC, he needs to fire everybody there, pretty much, right? There are one or two people that are probably neutral, and then there's like a couple of people that have at times, you know, they're kind of covertly anti-woke, right? But I won't say more than that. But basically, you got to get rid of everybody. Okay, so you got to bring in all new people, but you also can take advantage of this to cut a bunch of garbage, right? So obviously, all of the, I don't know how many diversity consultants they have, but remember, every word has to be checked over by 3 diversity consultants of every book, of every D&D book, of every Magic card, everything. Every single thing right now, and the way that's the way this works, right? They have put at least 3 diversity commissars on each project, and those people have to decide, right? So you got to get rid of that, right? You got to tell the marketing people to go screw themselves, okay? The marketing and the corporate side of the promotions have no idea what they're doing, because anybody who doesn't understand D&D. First of all, if somebody has never played it, they can't market it, right? They can't promote it, right? And so, but besides that, you don't need Like, this is one of the things, there are massive, we talk about massive inefficiencies in government, and everybody knows that. But in the modern corporate world, there's enormous, ridiculous levels of inefficiency. And Musk himself proved that when he took over Twitter, fired over 80% of the workers, and it started being better than it used to be, right? It had no problem continuing to operate. So I said on Twitter, what you'd need to do, first of all, you put an end to every project they currently have. You just dump it, right? Because it's not going to be worth it. I really doubt I would see, if I walked in there, with a kitchen sink on day one, and then I was shown these are the things we're still working on now, I would doubt that any of it would be worth it, right? Now, I don't know, the VTT, first of all, they shouldn't be making a VTT, right? So I'm guessing at this point, it's probably a complete clusterfuck anyways. I mean, they've got so much of a mess. It's very clear they're way behind, right? The VTT was supposed to be out already. It was supposed to be going. It was supposed to come out at the same time as the core D&D books came out. And that doesn't look to be anywhere close, okay? So obviously that's a problem. The people doing it, they're not the right people to do it. But the idea of some kind of VTT that is actually Wizards is not a bad idea. Right now, obviously, I guess if it was Elon who bought it, he'd want to somehow integrate it into X. That's all his business. I'd say the first thing you need to do is you need to separate the virtual tabletop stuff from the publishing. Right, so if he still wants to publish RPG books, which I would hope he would, that has to be done in its place, and the virtual tabletop is a separate deal, and they have to adjust to the mechanics of the publishing, right? Because it is two completely different play experiences, right? Virtual tabletop, if it's really profoundly immersive, is going to be somewhere in between an RPG and a video game, right? The people to get to do that would be somebody like Larian, I would bet, people who have a proven track record in making really badass stuff. Let's put it that way. I'm not an expert on video games, so maybe I don't know. Larian might not be the right choice, in fact, but it's something that comes to mind as they essentially almost did a VTT with the new Baldur's Gate, right? That kind of fulfills the role already, So then after that, I would guess that there would be nothing in their plate that would, on track in terms of publishing that would be of any interest to anyone, right? And obviously all the people involved have to be fired, right? Every single one of them are just garbage. They have to go. So you'd have to get a new team, what you'd really need are people who are good editors, good at layout, proofreaders, and art, right? And of course, we would want to make use of some professional artists, possibly bringing back some of the classics of, guys that did stuff for first or second edition, if they're still around, right? Especially more, I guess, some of the cooler stuff from the first edition era and and from, a lot of the stuff from second, right? Where some of one of the things that second did really well is that particular settings had a very specific art style for that setting, right? You look at a piece of art, you go, oh, that's Dark Sun, right? You know it right away, right? And same thing, oh, that's Planescape, obviously, right? So that's a clever thing to do. And then for design, you'd only need really one or two people doing design. Right? I could do it with two other people, okay? And, you'd want somebody to bounce off ideas. You'd want somebody else to mostly do a bit of the grunt work. And you could get out a new edition in under 6 months, right? And I've heard some people say, no, you're insane. That couldn't possibly happen. It takes 3 years to do it. Or at least, right? And of course that's true if you are trapped in this corporate contextual cycle, right? But if you give creative authority to the people who actually know how to make games that'll work, if you don't let marketing come in there and try to tell you, no, this is how we're going to sell it, right? We're going to have a room where there are people all dressed in all the colors of the rainbow. None of them will be white. They'll all be dancing around. And then at the end, we'll put a logo that says D&D, yeah, with a rainbow. I say, are you sure that that'll sell books? Sell books? that's all that marketing is good for at this point, right? I mean, it's one thing if you're marketing a common product that everybody buys. Then you know, if you know you have to know your product. And nobody knows the product of RPGs if they're not RPG tabletop gamers, right? So, if anything, the marketing what you'd have to do is in-house, have a person not in the marketing department of Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast, but in the D&D department who is skilled in marketing and knows the game. It's got to be someone who's been like a gamer for 20 years, right? Or at least 10 years. And that person will then provide for the big corporate marketing. This is how you do it, right? And that would be the way to handle that. So the real problem with getting stuff out is just that there are so many different bloated departments and so many extra steps that get added to the process that it extends things. Now, people might say, well, hang on a second, Pundit. You can't publish an RPG book in 6 months right now. It's just you. And that's true, actually. That is the case. But here's the difference, right? Right now, I'm making an RPG book. Like, let's say I've just finished the typing part, the text of 101 Sarmatians, which is my upcoming noble source book, the source book on the aristocracy for Baptism of Fire. It's got a ton of stuff, really interesting, lots of NPCs and plot hooks, and there's a couple of new NPC classes there, and there's quite a bit of stuff in there. So a lot of random event tables and things, and I think it'll be a great product for anyone who wants to have a game that has, that features the nobility or has like kind of more intrigue stuff going on in it, politics and whatever. But anyways, I finished the writing part of it. Now I have to submit it to my publisher. The publisher has to get the layout done, has to get the art done, has to get the all of the stuff, the borders, the cover, the whole shebang. And even the best of indie publishers, it's a one-person company, right? He has to do all of that. Most of the time while also having a full-time job, right? That is the thing that makes the biggest delay, right? The half of the delay is, you could say, it takes me a few months of work to write a product like 101 Sarmatians. And so I'm doing that. If I was putting a lot more effort into it, like if I was like really putting my nose to the grind, I could probably do it a little faster than that. So I could probably get it, even just by myself, I could probably do it in a couple of months instead of 3 months or 4 months. But I mean, obviously one person can only work so much, especially in a creative field, right? And in creative work, there are times when you just can't get it out, right? It's not technical writing. So then it goes to the publisher, in this case, Mad Scribe, and it's going to take him time. He's got another job. He's got other issues or other things to deal with. It takes him time. But if you're actually in a company like WotC, and you trimmed all the goddamn fat, right? All of the useless parasites and all of the pointless extra steps. And what you had is like I said, 3 or 4 people handling the presentation and layout of the book, right? And 1 or 2 or maybe 3 people handling the actual design. Okay, like one main guy, one guy that is there to act as a consultant, a counterweight, kind of what I did with Mike Merles. And then 1 or 2 typing monkeys that are mostly there to write in the work and then, kind of double check each other and stuff like that, right? Assistants, you could say, like Jeremy Crawford was. So if you have those, there's no reason, and then like I said, you do marketing in-house, and then you have the people do all the production. You could get it done in 6 months. You absolutely could, right? And really that part of that 6 months would probably be about giving enough time to build up hype, right? You could probably do it in less than 6 months. the reason that never happens right now is because of the, of the inevitable delays caused by all the absolute corporate nonsense and now the corporate woke nonsense, right? When every word of every book has to be checked by 3 different diversity commissars, that's a big chunk of time right there, isn't it? All right, so the other side is some people would say, well, why don't you just republish first edition? And I'm like, well, that might certainly be a thing to do. So one of the first things I would say is we're going to work on a new edition. We're going to make it into a new version of the game. But before we get to that, because you need to have something to do right now. And the 2024 edition of D&D is a disaster. You could keep publishing 5th edition stuff, but it's been around for 10 years now. And actually, I would suggest that the best thing you could do right now is to put out a reissue of classic D&D. And that is why, if Elon is going to buy, if he was ever going to buy Wizards of the Coast, it's because he loved classic D&D, okay? So do a reprint that becomes like the final classic edition. And what I would argue to him is it's like, Monopoly or Risk, right? There are tons of variants of Monopoly or Risk that come out, some of them more popular than others. But the core Monopoly game stays the same, right? It's there. And so, though it may actually not be as popular as the variants because everybody's already tried it, right? So, but you always have to have it there because it's kind of the foundational stone, right? Even so I would say that one of the first things WotC should do is reissue either the original 3 handbooks for advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and then make them permanently available, right? As print on demand or whatever, right? But in a new version, right? You could change the art in theory. I know that's for some of you that'll be heresy, right? But sometimes some of that could help. Or you could make it super classic, right? There's a discussion to be had either way for that. And those would be there, permanently for people who want it. But it would be understood. It would be like, you could say original version Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. Or you could also put out like the basic expert book instead, right? The BX, maybe as one combined product. Both of those would be totally viable, right? You could release that in, again, a new format of some kind, something that would be appealing. And then you come out with a new edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And the new edition would be the main edition, of course, because, people would be wanting to try the new thing. And what I would do with the new thing is something that keeps going along many of the lines of the original intention of 2014 5th edition, which is to say a game that is very easy for people to pick up and play, very easy for casuals so that they do not feel when playing like the guy who has read every rule in the book is going to always steal the stage from them because they'll always have a better character, they'll be able to do better things, right? So it's got to be a game that has a very low ratio of disadvantage to the casual player, because those are the part of the formulas that pick things up, right? It would be focused on very classic adventuring, and there would be things, it would probably keep the advantage and disadvantage mechanics. That is a popular mechanic. People like it. And it would probably keep elements of background. I'd probably change some things there. You guys know that in a lot of my, curiously, not any of these 3. Well, no, Star Adventure. Does Star Adventure have backgrounds? No, I don't even think Star Adventure does. But most of my games, Lion and Dragon and Sword and Caravan and all of these. Well, the Old School Companion 1 has an expanded background table. So there you go. It is in the Old School Companion 1. If I'm not mistaken, it is. Unless that's coming out in the Old School Companion 3, which is on the way, by the way. But anyways, I would keep backgrounds. I might change them a bit, but I'd keep them. What I would do is I would probably change a lot of the mechanics of the classes. I would simplify magic. There's always this problem in D&D Magic is your character can cast 6 spells, but for some reason there's 2,800 spells in the book. It doesn't. That's stupid, right? That's stupid. What you need to have is like some basic styles of spells, right? Like that you can then incorporate. And of course, you keep all the classics, right? Dungeon Crawl Classics did a really good job with that sort of thing, and I would go for something like that, right? And I would change a lot of the like superpower aspect of it. I would want it to be like heroic adventuring. Yeah, I want it to have a kind of high fantasy style, but it can easily be made into a kind of lower fantasy style as well. I would start with a like medium range danger option so that characters would be much more likely to actually die than they do in 5th edition. But not quite as much as they would in like if they were playing standard old school D&D. But the DMG it would be a complete guide to doing options. Right? I would go back, trying again to get these Gen Z people and Gen Alphas, which maybe would be more into it, to be able to understand that they can choose different options, right? So the core thing would be in the middle, and then you'd have the option to either go overboard into like your characters are superheroes, or on the other side, no, your characters are like, it's Game of Thrones, so you could die at any moment, right? Something like that. So that this would become a game that would be easily modular. And then, later products that would come out would be intended to assist that modularity. And of course, the DMG would also have a lot in it about how to do sandbox play and show the DM. And that would be the part that I'd want to be really careful when I wrote it in such a way that a 14-year-old could read that and would understand how by using these tables and by using these mechanics, you can make the game world operate itself on the basis of these rules and a little bit of formatting, and the DM just has to format it to his imagination. And that this makes the world a living world, and if I can get that through that part to the young DM, that would change everything, right? So that would be my purpose. The monster manual obviously would have all kinds of monsters and stuff like that. And I would try to add some interesting variations there and things, some random modifications to certain types of monsters, like different versions of them or different special abilities they might have, right? Like make it so that it becomes a little less predictable every time you run into a certain creature, what that creature may or may not do. Obviously, I could add stuff out of myth and legend that is not presently as prominent, and then we'd see where we'd go from there. But I'm sure that we would do some setting stuff, and I'm sure that we would do some adventure stuff, and there would be stuff that would also add sandbox mechanics. But of course, in following with the same concept that made 5e successful for so long, what there wouldn't be is a bunch of added rules bloat that overpowers characters and also burdens the game. Right? For the longest time, 5e did really, because that was something that Merles and I were both adamant about. Right? Is that this is what kills the editions always. Right? So you can release all kinds of other stuff. You can release adventures. You can release campaigns, settings, but what you can't do is have it be stuff that just bloats up the rules or inflates characters, right? You can't use the cheap tactic of selling it on the basis of these. You need this book because it'll make your fighter cooler, right, or something like that. Well, or your fighter more, better at killing things or better at whatever. To the point that people that don't have this book are going to be at a disadvantage, and all that sort of stuff, right? So they handled that pretty well for the entire time Mike Merles was with them, right? And then after that, it all went to crap. But regardless, that would be basically my plan, right? So it would be something that would look a bit more old school, but it would also largely be focused on not so much on trying to be super traditional, but on trying to be as much as possible as a system that everybody could enjoy playing to a certain degree, even if it wasn't their favorite game, which was also basically the mission statement of 5e, right? That was explicit in the preparation for 5e. Was this, we're not trying to make our favorite game here, right? 5e is definitely not my favorite game. I'm pretty sure it wasn't Mike Merle's favorite game. That is the game that we felt that most people could accept. It was like the median game, right? It was the game that people could handle playing, could have a good time playing. It's probably not their favorite game, but they can do it, right? And then it can also be changed around to make it more to your liking, right? That would be the goal. And as long as it was done well and it was done in a non-woke fashion, it's going to be successful, because 5e was successful, right? I think this is going to be successful too, if that was the way it went. So Elon, even if you don't decide to hire me, that's the kind of way you've got to go, right? You've got to get corporate off of the back of the designers. You have to trust their instincts, but make sure that you hire the right people, right? If you hire someone that's going to, end up saying, well, this game is about Marxism, then you've screwed yourself, right? You got to make sure you get the right people in there, who are people that are only interested in making it a great game and not putting in some kind of woke political message, but that also have the ability, the proven ability to design successful games. So I guess that's everything for today. If you like this video, please share it anywhere you think people will be in an absolute panic about the incredibly slim possibility of the RPG Pundit being in charge of D&D, but or anywhere you think people are going to be amused by it. And be sure to check out all the products that I have available. Stuff like Arrows of Indra, Star Adventurer for space opera, the Old School Companion 1 that is full of stuff to make your game more medieval authentic. And every other product that I have, you click the description of this video and it'll expand to show links to where you can get all of my products, including Baptism of Fire, my super best-selling latest OSR RPG, and The Invisible College, which I think Javier Milei would like, and of course, the Pundit Files, which is my periodical. It's coming out every 3 weeks now, because I've been busy working on these new source books. I was working on 101 Sarmatians, and now I'm going to work on The Last Vikings. But every 3 weeks now it's coming out, and the latest issue is Space Opera Adventure Locations, which has a bunch of kind of set-piece places that you could find in a space opera world, and some, rules about how to manage them, and random tables for events and things that might happen in them. Be sure to check that out if you're running a space opera game. Obviously, it was made for Star Adventure, but you could use it the way that the Pundit Files is. The issue is you could use it in any sci-fi game, actually, because it's not very big on rule mechanics as such. It's mostly about setting. Check out all my other Pundit Files. That's, I think, Pundit Files 24, if I'm remembering correctly. And so there's another 23 besides that, right? Look at my rules for jousting, rules for siege rules. Look at my Renegade Martial Artist class for OSR. Look at, everything. The Invisible College 1930s campaign. There's tons of stuff. Every single issue of the Pundit Files is available only at the Red Room store, and every single one costs the same. It all costs $3.50. Okay, so if you can get someone to give you $3.50, you can buy an issue of the Pundit Files. And that's everything for today. Currently smoking. This is a Lorenzetti egg plus Argento roots. And we will see you soon. Viva la libertad, carajo.